Welcome back. So I just want to talk a bit about namespace and about TS Lint. So that's what this lesson is going to be all about. Now, first of all, namespaces. If you notice, every time I make a new component, it ends up saying something with app in front of it. So this is a prefix to my application. Now the prefix is, you can keep it as app, but it's a good idea normally when you make a large application to kind of find your own prefix. Just like, notice right here, material design, they picked the prefix of MAT. That's their prefix, right? So whenever I read MAT, I know that's material designs setup right here. So if you kind of want to share your whatever you build with the world and they were able to use it later, maybe you want to change yours from app into something different. And for my case, I want to change all my prefixes into FPA, family photo app, something like that, FPA. Now that means that I'll have to change everywhere in the code where it says app, like the toolbar and the margin icon here. I have to change all of those. So it's important that if you want to do this, do it as fast as possible before you have a too large application, because then it'll be a lot of changes. So let's try and figure out how to do it first, and then we'll start changing everything. So the way you do it is, you just pretty much go into the selector, right? And here it says app margin, so instead I'll just say family photo app, like this, FPA. Now you'll have an error for now. That's actually not an error, that's just TS Lint, just a way for the system to warn you that maybe you shouldn't call this FPA, maybe you should call it app. We'll fix that in a second, because that's just something we've set up for validation purposes. Now when you change this here, it means that I have to go now into my the areas where I use this icon, and I have to change it here as well. So this needs to be now FPA. That's all it is. It's just a name for the selector, right? But now the FPA, I can read in my code, every time I see FPA, I know, oh, this is something I made for this application. Sweet. So how do we make sure that from now on when I make components, it won't just call it app again, so I have to go and rename this again and again and again? That's very simple. You go down to your Angular CLI file, you find the area that says prefix, and in that one you can just change it for FPA now, and every place from now on when I create a new component, it'll be called FPA in the selector instead of actually app. So let's try and see if that works. So I'll do an ng generate component right here, ng generate component, and I'll just call it in the shared folder again, and I'll just call it my comp, like this. It doesn't matter because I'll delete it in a second anyway. I just want you guys to see that now when my comp is created, it'll actually use the prefix of FPA up here. Let's have a look. FPA my comp. Sweet! So it just automatically added that now. Let me just remove this component again so it doesn't mess up anything. And let's also remove it in the shared app. Remember, every time you delete a component, you have to also remove it kind of in the shared app, since I just added it in there. Sweet! So now we know how to change the prefix, and we know how to both do it manually a single time, or actually do it for the prefix for every other component I'm going to build in the future. But what about the problem, the error I had in here, the FPA error? Well, that's because TS Lint, it's the thing that kind of annoys a lot of people, because if I do this, the TS Lint will tell me, maybe you should have a space here. Okay, I'll add a white space here. If I do this, it'll say, maybe you should add a space here. And if I do this, it'll say, maybe you shouldn't have all these new spaces here. Not using those new spaces is kind of stupid. So that's TS Lint kind of helping you decide how the code should look. But you can actually change those configurations if you want to. Because in the bottom of your file structure, you have something called TS Lint JSON here. And here's a lot of things you can set. You can just go and start reading up on all of these. There's a lot of things like, here's one-liners, how that should look. Should there be quotes, single or double quotation marks? Right now TS Lint says we should use single. You can also add that to double here if you wanted to. I'll keep it at single, but I just want to show you TS Lint file is just a validation file that you can change yourself. Now the one we want to change is the component selector, because we're going to say, instead of calling it app as default, we want our component selector to say FPA, right? Family photo app. Sweet, there we go. Now it doesn't complain anymore here. Ta-da! The complaint is gone, the validation is gone and accepted for FPA instead of app. But it means that my tool component now complains, because that explains it should be app. So let's just change that into FPA. And we use the tool component in here. So let's go in here and change that into FPA. There we go. Now that is also fixed. What else do we have? What other components? Well, we also have the album component up here. And that's probably also right now as app. Oh, let's just fix that as well. FPA. But there's one more TS file, and that's the app root here. That should also be FPA. Now where's the app root set? inside the index HTML file. So in here as well, I'm going to make an FPA here as well. And there we go. So now we've set it all up and everything should be running again. Let's try and check if our application is still running. Everything's still running. Sweet. But now we're using a different namespace for our entire application. That's all we had to do. Now not only have we made sure that our TS Lint is actually accepting the namespaces of FPA instead of app, but we also made sure that in the future, whenever we make a new component or anything like it, the prefix will be FPA. That's all we had to do. Thanks for this lesson. See you next time.